Hi folks, Chris Schmidt, Key West Makers. In this video I'm going to show you how we made this wine cabinet. This particular cabinet's for a commercial customer and it holds nearly 200 bottles of wine. But with a few simple guidelines you can easily scale it up or down. Regardless of size, you really want to pay attention to how the shelves fit together to support the weight of the bottles and give the whole unit strength. And of course we'll show you how we made the cabinet doors with chicken wire. So without further ado, let's get out to the shop. So anytime I have a project that has a cabinet or a carcass, I like to start with that. And this project has two 36-inch by 36-inch cabinets, 14 inches deep, one stacked on top of each other, both made from plywood, plus a bunch of crisscross pieces made from plywood for holding the wine bottles. So I've got 3 pieces of plywood. I buy the entire sheets, I rip them down to size, at least manageable pieces in my yard, then I bring them into the shop to get the pieces cut up. You can actually have the big box stores break those pieces down for you. They'll do that typically for free, but I use a very simple system for breaking them down myself in the front yard. A couple of strips of 3/4 inch plywood with notches out of them, stick them together in a tic-tac-toe pattern, lay that on the ground, then I can put my plywood on it and cut it to width with a circular saw with a guide along the edge. And now I can use my table saw to cut them to their final width. And even though I've removed 1/3 of the width from the sheet already, it's still a bit to manhandle. Referencing my cut list, I used the miter saw to cut them a little longer than their final length. Notice they're a little bit wider than my saw can handle, so I actually have to flip them to finish the cut. I'll use my miter sled here to square off one end of every one of the pieces. And as I go, I mark a little square on the corner here of which 2 edges were squared up. You don't always need it, but sometimes it's nice to have later on. At this point I will cut the tops, bottoms, and sides to their final length so I can make up the boxes. The rest of the pieces I'll wait till the boxes are complete to custom fit them, custom measure and cut. And I like to cut the 2 matching sides and the 2 tops and matching tops and bottoms together. And I know they're exactly the same size. Also, the edge that I marked as square, I keep against the fence here. There's a lot of different construction methods, joinery methods for making cabinets, and I'm actually about to release a video of a bunch of those different methods and show you the ones that I prefer. But in this particular, for this particular piece, I'm going to use these little floating tenons, a bunch of them in here where the 2 pieces come together. These are called dominoes, and this beast makes the holes, the slots for these dominoes. When you push the handle in, this little cutter comes out, I don't know if you can see that, into the wood, spinning and wobbling around, makes an oval shaped hole. Perfect size for the domino. The very first pieces that will go inside the carcass go from one corner all the way to the other, almost 49 inches. And the edges of them, I want to have a point on, basically a 90-degree angle, 45, yeah, you get it. So I am going to put a stop block down here so I can cut one side on a 45 degree, flip it over, cut the other 45 degree, and it should come out with the point right in the center. Now on the other end of this, I'm just going to cut it to length at a 90-degree angle, and I'm going to cut it oversized, see how it fits, and just keep sneaking up on it until it fits perfectly. And then when I get the length right, then I'll put the angle on the end. And there we go, exactly the fit I'm looking for. In order to really make this sturdy, wherever two internal pieces, the crisscrosses, meet, I'm going to put a dado or a groove for the mating piece to fit into. And the diagonal that would just fit will be the first one. I mentioned earlier that the carcasses are 36 inches square and that you could easily resize them. But when you do, you probably want to keep them square or you're going to have some really weird mating angles. This first piece is the longest piece, and it's also the only piece that has points on either end, meaning it doesn't have a squared off end at either end, and so it was a bit tricky to make. The rest of these have one squared off end, at least one squared off end on each side, and they'll be easier to sneak up on the length. So I'm going to fit these next, then I'll cut the dados in them, and then put the shortest pieces in. Now I'm going to measure to put the dados in here, 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 here. I've got my table saw blade set up to 45-degree angle, and I'm going to make the remainder of these cuts on the table saw just to show you an alternative way of doing it as opposed to the chop saw. And again, I've got a stop block here, so they're easy to cut both sides exactly the same. For those of you keeping track at home, I cut 8 of those, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, plus 1 in case I mess one up. And they're all cut a little bit oversized. I'll take one and keep nibbling away at it till it's the perfect size, then I'll cut all the rest to the exact same size. I think that's the fit. Here it is with all the pieces very loosely fitting into their slots, and it fits perfectly. Come in here, come in here, come in here. I want you to see the detail, the way that I made these. All the internal pieces would stay together mechanically just based on the fit and gravity. Now that I know that everything fits, I will disassemble the pieces, reassemble them with glue in the dados. Whew. So I need to treat the edge of the plywood now. I'm going to rip some thin strips of pine, glue them on, and I'll hold them in place while they're gluing with 23 gauge pin nails. And this is very much, I'll work around the edge first, and then it's just, sort of trim each piece to fit. The doors are made from 2.5 wide strips of pine 3/4 inch thick. Once they cut to their width and length, I run them through the router to make a profile on the ends of the horizontal pieces and the edge of the vertical and horizontal pieces. I do that on the router with 2 matching bits. This glue joint where the rail and stile come together here is really quite strong, and for residential use it would be perfectly fine. But these wine racks are going into a commercial application, and I want to strengthen it a little bit with a floating tenon. So I'll just add these dominoes in here, these floating tenons, for a little extra strength in the joint. The doors were also sprayed at the same times as the main carcasses, but these little strips that hold the chicken wire in the doors had to be done by hand. The inside edge of all the doors has a groove in it that would normally hold a solid panel, but once I cut the chicken wire to size, then I can slide it into those grooves and secure it with these small strips, and then secure the small strips with 23 gauge brad nails. Finally, I'll mount one cabinet on the other with some dominoes. Those will be permanently fixed together once they get to the installation. Then measure and mount for hinges on the doors and mount the doors to the carcass. Well folks, that wraps up the wine cabinet build. And you can see that the wine rack has been delivered and installed to the customer. As always, thanks for watching. We greatly appreciate the support. If you liked or were inspired by this video, please give us a like and consider subscribing to the channel. Next to the subscribe button, you'll see the little bell, and by clicking that, you'll get notified when our new videos are released. Thanks again, everyone. Chris Schmidt signing off from Key West.